New York Giants receiver Malik Nabers needed a second surgery on his knee. So, what does this mean regarding his readiness for 2026 and his timeline? We'll talk about it next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. I am your host, Patricia Traina, and on today's Locked On Giants podcast, it's always something, right, when it comes to injuries. So word came out via The Athletic that Giants wide receiver Malik Nabers underwent weeks ago a second surgery on his knees. So I'll tell you what that's all about, how that might potentially affect his timeline, and just kind of, where everything stands with him as I know it. Now, things can obviously change, but I'll give you the most recent information that I have. Then in segment 2, speaking of Malik Nabers, if he's not ready, does this change anything regarding Odell Beckham Jr.? We'll talk about that, and I have some thoughts about the timing and some of that as well in segment 2. And then finally in segment 3, the NFL and the networks, they've released little drips and drabs of the 2026 regular season schedule. We know who the Giants will face in week 1. We know whether or not they are going overseas. So we'll just talk about some of that, and I'll give you some other notes that I've gathered up regarding the schedule. We'll do that in segment 3. And of course, the schedule release program will be tomorrow night, Thursday night. We'll have a complete breakdown of the schedule. All right, let's get into the news of the day. So The Athletic reported that Giants wide receiver Malik Nabers had a second surgery on his right knee. Now, this was done weeks ago. We don't know how many weeks ago, but it was basically a cleanup of the knee. There was some scar tissue that was developing, and he went in and it was creating, it was creating some stiffness for him. So doctors had to go in, clean it out, and, get him back on the road to recovery. Now, according to the Athletics report, this second surgery should not create any kind of setbacks with regards to the schedule that Malik Nabers is on regarding, his rehab, which I'm saying, I don't buy, but I'll get to that in a moment. All right. So this cleanup that Malik Nabers had, here's, as I understand it, Malik Nabers, when he was initially injured in week 4 of last season, he waited almost a month before he had ACL surgery. So I think he was injured, I want to say the last Sunday in September, and he didn't have his surgery until October 28th. So that was almost a month, I think maybe about a month in between the time he was injured and the time he had the surgery. The reason for that is because typically doctors wait until the swelling goes down in the knee before they go in there and they repair it. The problem, though, is that Malik didn't have strictly an ACL tear. He had other stuff that went on. His meniscus was messed up, and I think there was one other ligament in his knee that got messed up as part of the injury. So this was more of a complex type of injury that had to be repaired. Now, that all being said, typically it takes about a year before somebody coming off of an ACL is fully back to quote unquote normal, or what you and I know to be normal. So you can just imagine for an athlete, maybe an athlete needs a little bit longer because, they're running and they're cutting and they're pushing off on their ligaments. So it might take them a little bit longer. The added surgery that Malik Nabers had, and again, we don't know exactly when he had this cleanup, but here's what I can tell you. Every time doctors got to go into your body to do anything regarding surgery, don't tell me that's not going to set you back a little bit. All right. Because you're going to have swelling, you're going to have inflammation, you're going to have, irritation from, the procedure. It's going to add onto the recovery period. Now, some guys and gals will get over it quickly. Some will not. This likely explains why every time Joe Shane was asked about Malik Nabers, he kept hedging. You've heard me say that on this program, that the Giants hedged every time the topic of Malik Nabers and when he would be ready came up. Malik himself hedged by saying, when I'm ready, I'm ready. That right there, folks, should have been our first sign that this was going to probably take a little bit longer than, the average comeback. Now, Malik will make a full recovery. I mean, there's no question about that. The question is the timing that is involved. All right. So that being said, what are we potentially looking at here? Now, this is just me taking an educated guess based on, again, the information that I have. I have said now for several shows that I believe Malik Nabers is going to start training camp on the PUP list. I do not think he's going to be able to pass a physical when the training camp starts at the end of July. All right, that should not surprise anybody. I think what they're going to do with Malik is they're obviously going to be cautious with him. You don't want to put him out there and then, heaven forbid, there's a setback. And now you've got to start all over again. Malik, by the time we get to training camp, you're looking at, I want to say 10 months, I think he'll be removed from the injury. 10 or 11 months, I think it is. So they are going to ease him back, right? I don't know if he's been, able to run or do anything during the practices that they've had. We haven't been allowed in to see the veterans practice. They did have that voluntary mini camp before the draft. We weren't allowed to see it. We will be allowed in the building next Thursday for OTA number 3. I don't expect to see Malik Nabers doing much of anything. Now, obviously, if we see him running, or even if it's just a jog, that's a positive sign. But I would be very surprised if we see him doing anything. I'd be surprised if they even let him out on the field while the practice is going on, because sometimes when a guy is rehabbing, they keep him inside for treatment and rehab on machines and whatnot inside the building. So that's going to be a big tell. But what I think is going to happen with Malik Nabers, what I think makes the most sense, the Giants will probably take the same path that they took with Andrew Thomas last year. Andrew Thomas, if you remember, when he was coming off of that season-ending foot injury, what the Giants did was they put him on PUP to start camp because he couldn't pass a physical. Then they took him off PUP, I want to say about a week and a half or so before the start of the regular season, or actually before the cut date. But he didn't really, they gradually ramped him up, because we talk about being in shape. You got to get into physical shape and you got to get into football shape. And the Giants used that time to, get him off of the PUP list so that he could practice and get him into shape. But even then, the whole idea there was, okay, he's off PUP. Now we can put him on the 53-man roster. We don't have to move him from active PUP to inactive PUP to start the season. That's what I think the Giants are looking to do with Malik. All right. They'll probably have him on the PUP list for the majority of camp, take him off at some point just before, like the last preseason week of the schedule, and then, be able to move him from training camp roster to the 53-man roster. But here's the other thing. I would be surprised if we see Malik Nabers for the first 2 or 3 games of the season. Again, keeping in mind the Andrew Thomas situation. And I get it. It was a different injury, a different player, a different everything. But I'm just basing it off of that because that seemed to work out well for the Giants. Andrew Thomas, if you remember, came off PUP, but did not play for the first 2 games of the regular season. They gave him extra time to get into football shape after missing most of training camp. By the time he played in the third regular season game, Andrew Thomas was on a pitch count. He only played, I think, 1/2 of that game. And I think that was against the Chiefs. By week 4, he was good to go. All restrictions lifted, green lighted, everything. I think the Giants will look to do the same thing with Malik Nabers, but I'm not so sure if it's going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever. Now, here's something else to, talk about. I don't think it'll get to this, but we have to mention it. Could Malik start the season on the PUP list and then, gradually work his way back? I don't know that that's going to make a whole lot of sense. I think, you just carry him and he's inactive. And the reason why I say I don't think he'll land on the PUP list to start the season is if you're on the PUP list, you can't practice. Then you get your 21-day window where you can go back and you can practice and round yourself into shape. And then, they make a decision on whether you're ready or not. I don't think the Giants will do that. I mean, unless there is a setback that happens, I don't see them keeping Malik Nabers, off the practice field. He's going to have to eventually get back on the practice field, test out that knee, and just develop confidence in it all over again. So I think that's what's going to happen with Malik Nabers. But, as far as the report that, the second surgery, this cleanup is not expected to affect his rehab or his timeline, I don't buy that because, again, every time they go in and they got to do something, you're going to have post-operative swelling and scarring and all kinds of stuff that the body is going to need to heal. So that's my take on where things are with Malik Nabers. I think, when he does return, you probably won't see the Malik that, we saw pre-injury until the second half of the season. It could be that this season ends up being a washout for him. But, if we're being optimistic here, I would say maybe the second half of this season is when you're going to really see, Malik get back on the bicycle, so to speak, and look like the Malik of old. Just my guess, folks. I'm just going off of what information I have and what I have seen in the past. And again, I know everybody's different. I hope that, Malik bucks the trend and he's ready to go sooner. But I never got the impression, especially given how Joe Shane every time has hedged on whether Malik would be ready or not. I never got the impression that there was a whole lot of confidence that he would be ready in time. But here's the good news. The good news is we've got a lot of time. It's only May 14th. All right. We've got a lot of time before a decision has to be made. So a lot can happen over the next few weeks as long as Malik keeps working at his rehab, which I know he's doing. And as long as, everything goes according to plan. So that is the big hope. So that being said, what does this mean for the Giants and Odell Beckham Jr.? We'll talk about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, we live in a world where we can stream anything, order food in minutes, and carry supercomputers in our pockets, and somehow buying tickets to a live game still feels complicated. Hidden fees, jumping prices, endless steps. There has to be a better way. That's why I use the Game Time app. It gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets simple, whether it's NFL games, concerts, comedy, whatever you're into. You can see panoramic views from every seat before you buy, and the price you see includes all fees. There's no surprises at checkout. You can even spot zone deals where you pick the section and Game Time picks the seat for extra savings. 2 taps and you've got great seats locked in. Fast, easy, done. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Hey, Giant fans, support for today's episode of Locked On Giants comes from Square, the system that helps fix one of the biggest headaches in running a business. Starting a business is exciting, but actually running it, that's where things can get complicated fast. Payments, inventory, staff, scheduling, online orders. It's a lot to manage. And that's why Square brings everything together into one connected system. Square helps you take payments, track sales, manage inventory, and keep your business running smoothly without juggling a bunch of disconnected tools. One thing that I've noticed at some of my favorite local spots is how seamless everything feels when they use Square. Checkout is quick, receipts are easy, and the whole experience just feels more organized. Square helps businesses feel more efficient, professional, and ready to grow. If you're starting a business or running one that deserves better tools, Square helps you sell, manage, and grow without slowing down. And right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's SQUARE.com/GO/LockedOnNFL. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in America. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credentialed member of the Giants media for Locked On as well as for New York Giants on SI. Welcome, by the way, to the Blue Crew, to the everydayers, to the newcomers, and everybody in between. Appreciate you spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And don't forget, coming up Thursday night, I'm going to have a schedule breakdown show. All right. So I'll break down the soft spots, the hard spots. I've got some status, some data that I'll give you once I have everything put together. So we'll break down the schedule for you on Thursday night. And we will also, by the way, have a special Giants squad show on Thursday night. We'll talk about the schedule there as well as everything else, all things Giants. So that show, I think, is going to start at 9 o'clock. That's a live stream. We hope you will join us for that show. All right, let's get back to today's program. So with the news about Malik Nabers having a second surgery to clean out his knee, what does this mean for the Giants and Odell Beckham Jr.? Now, all along, I questioned whether Odell and the Giants would reunite. And I based that on John Harbaugh basically saying, it has to be right for the Giants. It's got to be right for Odell. And, him saying the last time we spoke with him, Odell's going to continue to train out in Arizona, get ready, and we'll revisit the situation down the line. Okay, so now with this news regarding Malik Nabers, does that change anything potentially? It could. Does this mean that Odell comes back on a 1-year deal, a veteran minimum deal? Well, if he agrees to that, why not? Here's the question, though, that I would have. If Odell can still give the Giants something, and, look, he's working at it, he's training, he's trying to keep himself in shape. If anything is going to happen with Odell, it's going to be, I think, before they report to training camp. And the hang up that I suspect might, torpedo this, if you will, would be the money. I don't get the sense that the Giants want to invest a whole lot of money in Odell. It would be like a 1-year deal. If they can get him on a veteran minimum with incentives or something like that, I think that's what they would prefer to do. This is just my guess. But, if Odell, if Malik's not going to be ready, then by default, do you say, okay, Odell becomes your wide receiver 1? That's where the question comes in. Who becomes the default wide receiver 1 if Malik is not ready? Do you say, okay, it's going to be the rookie Malachi Fields? Do you say it's going to be Darius Slayton? Do you say it's going to be, somebody else? That's the big question I think the Giants need to ask themselves. Now, here's the other thing that you have to take into consideration here. Last year when Malik was injured, the Giants leaned heavily into 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends. They have since beefed up the tight ends by adding Isaiah Likely. I think we'll see a lot of 12 personnel this year, all right, regardless if Malik is ready or not. But would we maybe see even more 12 personnel than what we have seen, in the past if Malik is not ready? And if the Giants say, all right, you know what? Odell's not the answer. We don't think he's going to be able to give us what we need. These are some of the questions that the Giants have to address. Now, in my opinion, I still think that Odell coming back to the Giants right now, I don't see it. That's not to say that it won't happen. Again, if Odell continues to train and Malik's not going to be ready for the start of the season and they're potentially thinking, okay, you know what, we might need to put him on the PUP list to start the season, then I think it makes sense for Odell. But here's the other thing, folks. I don't believe Odell is the only receiver out there that, could potentially come in and help the Giants. It just so happens the advantage that he has, he's somebody that Harbaugh knows, having had him on the Ravens for one season. He's someone that Giants know, all right? Maybe not Joe Shane, because Joe Shane wasn't here when Odell was here, but certainly they have gotten to know him. Bringing in Odell, in my opinion, wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, I think if Odell is more mature, which I think he is, I think he could be a positive force in the locker room. But the big thing here, I think that's going to drive this is what happens with Malik. And if they want to go, do they want to get more 11 personnel on the field? Do they want to be primarily a 12 personnel? These are things that we don't yet know. And quite honestly, once we get to talk to the coaches, and I anticipate we will get to talk to the coaches, particularly the coordinators, once we get to the mandatory minicamp in June, and the position coaches, I'm sure we'll get to talk to them at some point. This is all information that I think is going to come out and kind of, give a little bit more of a hint as to what direction I think the Giants are going to go in. But, let's say for argument's sake, Odell isn't the answer. The Giants decide, nah, he can't give us what we need. That now puts a lot of onus on Malachi Fields to potentially be wide receiver one. Can he be that guy? Why not? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, nah, he's not ready for it because, I don't know that. And I don't want to put the kid down. But it does create a whole interesting scenario, this whole Malik Nabers situation. And, whether or not he's ready or not ready, it's a monkey wrench in the plans. And I'm curious to see how it plays out. Again, some of you have said, oh, you don't want Odell back. That's not true. I have nothing against Odell, contrary to popular opinion. Do I think he can help the team? I'm sure he can. To what degree and to the degree that John Harbaugh needs him to, that I don't know. That's only John Harbaugh knows. Having seen him work out, having spoken to him, having, knowing what kind of offense they want to run and all that stuff. So we can all sit here and say, yeah, go out, sign Odell and let it be the end of it. And, here's the other thing to keep in mind, folks. Some of you say, well, why don't the Giants just get it over with, sign Odell, bring him into camp and let him compete? If they're going to do it, they will wait until the summertime. They're not going to do it now. They're going to wait until Odell works out, and trains a little bit more. They're also going to want to see where Malik is in his rehab. So there's no rush to do it right now. But once we get to training camp, then it becomes a little bit more of a priority that I think they have to consider. So that's kind of where I think it stands. I could see it happening. I would be surprised if it does. And again, what they do with Odell is going to tell us a lot about where Malik is. So if they bring him back, maybe that does mean Malik isn't going to be ready for 6 weeks, which is the length of a PUP stay. So we'll have to see. Right now it's just too early to tell, but you cannot close the door on a potential Odell Beckham Jr. reunion with the Giants. So we'll just have to see how it all plays out. I'm sure there'll be discussions between Odell and the Giants. I'm sure there might even be another workout. If he's continuing to train, I'm sure Harbaugh is going to probably want to get his eyes on him again to see how far along he's come. So that's where we stand right now. A lot of uncertainties, a lot of what ifs. It kind of stinks that we have to be talking about this because Malik is such a key part of this offense, but the Giants will overcome this one way or another. They will at any rate. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, there were a few things leaked about the 2026 schedule, so we'll talk about what they are and what they mean right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you've ever opened your bank account and thought, where did all my money go? You're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast. And that's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. It tracks all your subscriptions in one spot and can help you cancel the ones that you don't need with just a few taps. It automatically categorizes your spending so that you can actually see where your money is going. And you can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of upcoming bills. It just makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clearer picture of your finances day to day. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, Giant fans, before we get to segment 3 of today's Locked On Giants podcast, the off-season doesn't exist for the Everydayer Club. Join the group chat to talk Big Blue year-round and get every episode of the show ad-free, plus other perks such as membership in the Giants fans-only Blue Crew community members, invitations to AMA video chats, merchandise discounts in the Locked On merch store, and a chance to talk ball with fans and hosts of all your favorite sports teams in our Everydayer Club Discord channel. Head on over to loggonnygiants.supercast.com or hit the link in the show notes for more info or to join. All right, Giant fans, let's get back into segment 3 of today's Locked On Giants podcast. Now, depending on when you're watching this show, the NFL schedule has not been released. It is due to be released Thursday night, 8 o'clock officially. There will be leaks, I'm sure, between the time I record this and the time you listen to it or watch it. Here's what we do know, and I have some additional data, okay? So we know that the Giants will open the season at home week 1 against Dallas. What else is new? And it's going to be a Sunday night game. Yay, right? So Giants week 1 at home against Dallas. So a little background on week 1. This will be the 6th time since 2013 that the Giants are opening up the season against Dallas. They are 1-5 in those games. Since 2014, they are 2-11 in week 1 openers. They last beat Dallas, by the way, September 11, 2016. Right, so it's been a while. New York is, they're basically looking to turn around and get off to a fast start. All right, they are 2-11 in week 1 openers since 2014. That is not good. And especially, you're talking opening the season against an NFC East opponent. You want to hit the ground running because those games basically count twice in the standings at the end of the year. The good news, John Harbaugh is 12-6 in week 1 games. All right. He's going to have this team ready to play. All right. No country clubs in training camp. He's already said that the starters and the key reserves are going to play in the preseason. These guys are going to be ready, folks. I'm telling you right now, they will be ready. And, the week 1 game, it's always electrifying. It's going to be Harbaugh's debut as the head coach of the Giants. There's going to be, the atmosphere is going to be electric. And you'd like to think that that's going to kind of rub off on the players and the coaches on the field. So the week 1 game, not a surprise. Dallas, it's a tradition, right? So we'll see how that one plays out, but that is set in stone. That has already been announced by the league, and the Giants, of course, confirmed that. All right. Now, before I get into the international thing, I want to just quick touch upon week 2. Now, I don't know who the Giants are playing in week 2 as of this recording, but I'm going to mention week 2 only because the Giants, in getting off to the start the season, they have not been very good the last several years. In week 2, the Giants since 2013 have only won 3 games in the second week of the season. They will be looking to avoid an 0-2 start for the 4th straight season this year, right? So basically what we have had in the past is the Giants have treated the first couple of games of the season as an extension of the preseason. Can't have that. I mean, that drove me crazy. I mean, those games count against the playoff seeding and your overall record. And I just never understood. It's not like the Giants are a perennial playoff team to where they can afford to throw away a game. And quite honestly, even a perennial playoff team can't afford to throw away a game. So this is why I think John Harbaugh gets it and why I say this team's going to be ready. They've got to avoid an 0-2 start, regardless of who they play in that second game of the year. All right, now, I mentioned international games. After there being reports that the Giants were headed overseas, that is not the case. It has now been confirmed the Giants will not be going overseas. I'm happy about that. I'm not going to lie. All right. Initially, it was thought that maybe the Giants, because they have marketing rights in Germany, might face the Detroit Lions. That game being a Giants road game. And the Lions have marketing rights as well in Germany. That is not going to happen. So I thought, okay, when that word came out, I thought, okay, well, maybe it'll be Washington, but I was kind of like, I don't know if they would move another, interdivision game overseas. There are two this year that are being played out of the country. I think they're the NFC West games, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, the Washington Commanders are playing a game in London, and I thought maybe that would be the game that they would send the Giants overseas. Nope, not happening. In thinking about it, the Giants were last overseas in 2024, I believe. That was like the last Daniel Jones game. So maybe in retrospect, it was too soon to expect the Giants to go overseas. But that I can tell you this, I would not be shocked if the Giants are sent overseas next year. And this is a good thing that they're not going overseas. And I'll tell you why. The reason why it's good that they're not going overseas this year is the John Harbaugh effect. Now, let John Harbaugh kind of put his roots down with the Giants. I mean, we've all got great expectations, I think, based on John Harbaugh's history and his resume. But I just think it would have been cheating the fans to send the Giants out of the country, given that this is Harbaugh's first year. Given the fact that you don't know if you're going to have Malik Nabers at full strength, or, Cam Scatterbo, was he even going to be back at full strength? I know it's a gamble and you can't kind of count on that, but to me, from a marketing perspective, it just wouldn't have made sense, I think, in retrospect, to send the Giants out of the country. So the two road games, the one at Detroit and, of course, the one at Washington, they will be played stateside. The Giants will have 9 home games this year, 8 on the road. So fans, you don't have to worry about having to get up at 9:30 in the morning to watch football, or, whatever time of night it would have been. I know some of the international games are even going to be played like at 8 o'clock local time overseas. So you don't have to worry about all that. That's the good news. All right. So that's what we have so far about the schedule. Now, I've talked the other day about what my hopes are for the schedule. I'm rooting very strongly for a mid-season bye week, somewhere around late October, early November. I'm really rooting for that. That would be cool. But we'll find out. We'll find out, and we'll break all of that down on tomorrow's show, obviously, once we have the final schedule in our hot little hands. So that being said, that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, spending part of your day with us here. Coming up again on Thursday, the Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to break down the schedule Thursday night. Once it is fully released, we're going to have the squad show at about 9 o'clock. I'll update you on that. Just keep an eye on the YouTube channel for that, for the starting time. Then also coming up on Locked On Giants, I'm going to have Ed Valentine on the program. That'll probably be Monday's show. And we will talk about the rookie camp, and we'll also start to preview expectations and whatnot for the OTAs, which start next week. So we got a lot coming for you here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Hope you will be a part of it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow, Giant fans.